Welcome to Mythic Alchemy, where I take Mythic Game Master Emulator and combine it with other ingredients to see what I can brew up. Today we're going to combine Mythic with Lego. Are we going to end up with a charm or a jinx? Is it going to be a good combination or a catastrophe? Stay tuned for the verdict. But first, let me pitch you the idea, then I'll show you an example. If you don't know yet, Mythic GME is a set of rules that lets you play tabletop RPGs without needing a game master. To come up with a story, you just have to follow simple rules and ask questions that can be answered by a yes or a no, then roll dice to get an answer. These rules are super versatile, and the person who created them says you can use them with nearly any RPG. But what if you use them to play with Lego? After all, Legos have a ton of story potential. Personally, they are one of the first ways I started learning about storytelling. As a child, I would mix and match Lego figures to come up with cool characters, then basically make them fight. They are expressive, they are endlessly customizable, and there are so many sets that if you have a lot of them, you can probably tell any story you can imagine. Or if like me you were foolish enough to give away most of your childhood collection, then you might just have a few sets left. Which is not a bad thing, because those restrictions will help you narrow down what kind of story you're going to tell. Since I still have some Lego City police figurines, robbers, and a handful of civilians, I decided my story would center around a conflict between the police and some criminals. I will now start explaining my test story. First, I will walk you through my character creation process because I think it will show you the pros of combining this rule system with a toy like Lego. I found that it's a great way to make your characters come to life and to give you ideas when you start role-playing. Here's what I came up with. I decided on 2 police officers, and since I had a male and a female torso, I went with one character of both sex. I used Mythic's meaning tables to randomly generate the characters because I find it helps me think outside the box. For the male, I roll on the appearance table and the traits and flaws table, and I got Sinister Petite and Decrease Partial. I put my interpretation on those keywords and decided he would be an odd-looking short cop with a cold and unfriendly demeanor, and I named him Matt Henshaw. For the female cop, I got Beautiful Bald and Possessions Trouble, so I imagined a beautiful young female with a bad case of alopecia called Candace Jones. And to account for the possessions trouble, I decided she used to be a kleptomaniac as a teenager and would steal clothes from shops. Then I decided on 3 robbers. I used the same meaning tables to generate them, and I just added 1 on the background table for the leader. I also decided to randomly roll for their sex, so I decided that I would roll a d4, and on a 4 they would be a female. That gave me 1 male leader and, surprisingly, 2 female accomplices. The leader got an appearance of trendy, colorful, and here you will see that I used to have the stocky keyword, but I decided to discard it because the only way I found how to make it work would have been to give him short legs, and since I already gave short legs to the cop, I thought it would just be weird. For the next roles, I got Misfortune Object for the trait and War Chaotic for the background. So I came up with a guy called David Walsh and gave him a longer description. In short, he's a military veteran gone bad, who was recently released from prison before contacting some female admirers of his to organize the robbery. I named these admirers Faith Hayes and Katie Davis and was pleased with how the rolls turned out. For Faith, I rolled Clothing Professional and Small Dominant. So she became a bratty and immature woman who never admits she's wrong and who looks cute and feminine with her small stature. To account for Clothing Professional, I figured either she would dress well or she would be disguised in overalls for the robbery. I also came up with a little backstory stating she's from the countryside and fell in love with David at a young age. Katie turned out quite different. She got intimidating masculine and beautiful impaired. Therefore, I imagine her to be pretty much opposite from Faith. A tall, boyish woman from the city who likes David's devil-may-care attitude, but who is tough and not very feminine, nor good at picking clothes for herself, which leads her to be jealous of the attention Faith gets from David. With all 5 characters done, I just needed a good main location. And since the meaning tables served me so well thus far, I figured I would use them to find the location. So I rolled and got Business Tranquil. I thought about it and found that it could well be a small garage in a town outside the city. At this point, I was ready to play. And with what I had written so far, I could already imagine what may happen, and I was pleased with how the character creation went. I feel like turning the characters into minifigures makes them feel much more real. And since you can pose them and create a mood using your lighting, they're an effective way to illustrate the story. I'm sure that even though the tale has yet to start, your imagination is probably already filling in the gaps and envisioning what might happen to them or how each character will behave. So before I move on to my verdict, I will show you how Scene 1 turned out, so you can get an example of how Legos would play out when used with Mythic. Scene 1, Chaos 5, Last minute preparations. What's expected? The robbers have managed to get the information about the garage, and they are ready to plan their approach. Okay, first roll of the game. I'm gonna test if my first scene goes as expected. Are the robbers about ready to execute their plan? Or are they gonna run into issues? I will have to roll over my current chaos factor, which is 5. Let's see. Oh, that is a 10. So it goes as planned. David, Faith, and Katie are all gathered in a small kitchen area. Faith has just come back from the garage where she was pretending to inquire about getting her car fixed. So in my mind, Faith was sent to check on the security systems. So I will ask, is there a solid security system protecting the building? And I think the odds are 50-50 because I would think David chose the building because it seems like it's older and maybe not as well defended. But at the same time, nowadays everyone has some kind of security alarm. So let's see what we get. Ooh, interesting. So it's a exceptional no. Faith enters with a wide smile of self-satisfaction. Hey guys, you'll never guess! The place is wide open. David is sitting at the little kitchen table, fidgeting with a gun. You checked the doors? Yep, nothing on the doors. What about the windows? Asks Katie. Nothing on the windows either. There is a pause. David starts laughing, then they all join in. That's perfect, he says with a grin. He steps up and goes to Fate. I knew you had it in you. Katie cuts in. Did you check the safe? Of course I didn't. Do you think the guy would have just let me scrutinize it like that? Aha! Not exactly wide open then. He probably has some kind of alarm there. What fool wouldn't? Now it's gonna be Katie's turn to tell us about her progress. So I'm gonna ask, did she manage to get supplies to cut into the safe? I think it's likely. I feel like Katie wouldn't be bad at tracking that kind of equipment, even if it's just something to pry it open. Oh, well, there we go. Speaking of fools, look what I managed to steal from the construction site. This big-ass drill. She points to a device leaning against the wall. I saw on YouTube that people like to use drills to crack a safe, so I thought, hey, that one should do the trick. Well, says David, you'll have to carry it yourself, because I sure know it's not Miss Daisy's over there who's going to lift it. Hey, says Fate. What, it's true, replies David. And what are you gonna carry, Mr. Big Soldier Man? We shift our focus to David. What is David hinting at? Is he bringing a particular weapon to the theft? I think it is likely. Let's see. Ooh, that's an exceptional no. Interesting. Well, now I'm gonna have to think why not, or what it could be instead. If you think I'm bringing a rifle, then you're sorely mistaken. He sits down. Some might say I never learned my lesson. Obviously we're doing this, so there you go. But I know better than to bring guns. Guns will get us shot. And I'm sorry, ladies, but I wouldn't trust either of you with one. I guess it's as good a time as any to tell you why I chose this garage. This guy has been working on a vintage blue sports car. It's just like one I saw in a movie as a kid. Can't help but want it. How does Katie react to learning that? Does she get angry? I think it would be unlikely, cause I imagine they're both under the charm of David. But who knows? I mean, just the revelation of knowing he's not even going for the money, that's pretty wild. Alright, so I would need 35 and under to get it. Nope. She's still under the charm, I guess. Katie stays silent. Fate looks a bit shocked. So, you don't want to get the money? No, Fifi. You don't get it. I want the money and the car. Let's get both, he says with a coy smile. End of scene. And I'm adding 1 to the chaos factor, just for the context of the story, and also because David, well, he thinks he can get the money and the car. He's got something else coming for him. So, the verdict, and here I'm helped with my notes. So, to go quick through the pros and cons, the first pro I have is that it works pretty well with Mythic. The fact that you have Legos and you have a limited number of them, unless you have like an insane collection, it makes you have to think a little bit more outside the box, and I find it helps with creativity. To know that, okay, this is the number of police torsos I have, so I can only have 2, 3, 4 policemen. I can't have like 20 of them. But maybe I have more stormtroopers, so maybe they could be the bad guys, and those can have a huge army that my heroes have to defeat. You know, you could go any kind of way with that. What's cool is that they help you illustrate the adventure. They're very posable, they're very photogenic, right? You can light them in 3D like a movie if you have those kind of skills. And also it's fun to play with Legos. So it's quicker to do than stop motion, right? Sure, it doesn't look as good in the sense it doesn't look as much like a movie, but it's more in the realm of a visual novel or a comic. Maybe, since it's Lego, you could use it to introduce younger kids, teens, to RPGs. So you wouldn't have to use a very complex rule set like Dungeons and Dragons. You could just go with basic Mythic, which is all about yes or no, and help your nephew or your cousin or your younger brother understand what a roleplay game is. And another pro would be for Lego YouTubers if they wanna try to copy my format and cover any kind of Lego release, right? Let's say you're a Lego YouTuber. You have some clone trooper set and maybe you have a droid set, and you could make a little story out of these and roll for the different situations using those figures as the restriction on your story. It would really show off the storytelling potential that is in Lego, and that, to me, that always was the biggest draw. Now the cons really quick. It's overall time consuming, right? So the way I built the set, it was pretty intricate. Choosing the minifigures, writing a background for them, it takes time, yeah. One of the easy fixes I thought about is, instead of having like the big garage that's like a proper build the way I did it, you could have just like little props. You could have a broken car and some seats, and maybe that would be enough to represent it. Another way to make it quicker is that if you wanted to do a scene like I was doing, you could all place it in one location. So you just have to build that one and use it for your whole video, let's say. If you were to roleplay like that, especially if you have combats, you would probably need to come up with home rules. So for example, how far can a figure move each turn? Since I'm used to D&D and other RPGs where combat are a big thing, I would probably just come up with, you can move 5 studs every turn, or even maybe measure it with a ruler. But you would need to come up with that, come up with a number of health points or hit points. You would have some figuring out to do. To finish off with some other notes I have on this, you don't have to do it the way I did. I did it to be kind of more of a story that would work well visually and with a soundtrack, voiceover, that kind of stuff. You could technically put even more work than I did and make it into a fully fledged stop motion. Basically, use the rules to come up with the story and then animate it fully. But I probably wouldn't do that. I would probably strip it down a lot if I were to actually play that as an RPG with other people. You could actually use any character, right? You could use like someone from Marvel, some Star Wars characters, some other original characters you come up with. You could prepare only the characters you want to see in advance. So let's say you wanted to do a Star Wars roleplay. Maybe you would just come up with your protagonist, the villain, and maybe your master, right? So maybe you're role-playing as the Padawan, and then you have your mentor, and then you have the big villain. And all the rest, you just kind of improvise, you pull out characters from your different sets, and you go by the seat of your pants, you know? So same thing with locations. I think that's the real place where you lose time, because they take a while to build. So you could probably use sets you already have if you're already a Lego fan with a big collection, Or, as I said, just build 1 or 2 in advance and you know you're gonna use them. Or if you're doing a role play, maybe each session is in one location, and then between sessions you build the next one. So let's say you're doing a sci-fi role play, maybe one session you're all in the same planet. So maybe you have a few props that make it look like a bar, and maybe you have another few props that make it look like a Tuscan outpost, and maybe you have a few droids in case they want to go to a droid shop, and maybe you even have a little spaceship or two in case they want to go in a chase or something. To sum up, I think this combination of Mythic with Lego works well with certain groups. The first one would be obviously Lego fans. They already love Lego, maybe they also like role-playing, and why not combine the two, since it works so well. It gives you kind of a reason to play with your Lego and build sets, and it gives life to the sets, the figures. I thought especially giving the minifigures a background really got my imagination going, so I'm sure other people out there will enjoy trying this. A second group would be those who want to tell a story. They have Legos, but they're not committed to doing a full stop motion. Right? I have seen in the past people doing little comic strips with their Legos, or little blogs. There's a whole plethora of people who roleplay online and who use pictures and different minimalist things to illustrate their roleplay. I think those kinds of people should look into Lego as a way to illustrate, because it pairs really well. The third category would be, as I mentioned, people who love role-playing and want to get their younger family members or friends to try it as well. You would probably have to make it as simple as possible, but if you're the one that is coming up with the story in Mythic, just using the table for dice rolls, I don't think it's very complicated to get it across to someone how to do that. And I'm sure they would love the aspect where everyone is creating the story, so you can show them how to do it, and then you ask them a question. What do you think we should ask the game? Should we ask if I don't know, the supervillain apologizes in the end? Oh yes, I think we should. Dice roll. Oh, the villain is being naughty and he's trying to escape from the police. Right? I mean, maybe that sounds really silly, but I'm sure you could make it work for kids. I hope you enjoyed that video. My first episode of Mythic Alchemy, because I really think you can combine Mythic with a ton of things. So this series, the way I see it, it's going to be all about me trying to come up with ways of putting Mythic in everything. Well, everything. With all sorts of roleplays. And so I hope you enjoyed this pilot video. If any of you end up doing a project combining Mythic and Lego, or even if you combine other kinds of solo roleplays with Lego, don't hesitate to put it in the box below. I'm sure people would love to check your project out, and I would be so curious to see how you implement it in your content. So get out there, try it out if you feel inspired by this combination, And stay creative, guys. See you in the next one. Bye.